You have to understand your options before you can pick the best one. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and the other day a friend of mine sent me a note because he noticed that the Transition Assistance Program folks kind of glossed over his options for what to do with his thrift savings program. And if you saw my video on why it is so hard for transitioning service members to find financial advice, you'll remember that there are systematic factors that make it challenging to access this information. And you probably remember from that video that I am not a licensed financial advisor. I got about as much qualifications as any other guy standing around drinking coffee in the break room. Be that as it may, the Thrift Savings Plan, TSP, is just a tax-deferred retirement account for federal employees. It offers the same kinds of benefits that corporations provide to their employees through 401k plans. Okay, so right away, there are two important things to make clear. First, TSP is largely analogous to 401k. So if you transition out of the military into a civilian job and they start talking about 401k plans, they're talking about the same thing as TSP. And this is going to be important when we start talking about options. And second, did you notice how TSP is for federal employees? TSP is a benefit for both military and civilian employees. And again, that is going to come into play when we start wargaming options that would be best for you. Okay, so what are your options for handling your TSP account? Well, there's basically 5 of them. You can leave your assets in the TSP account. You can roll your TSP account into an individual retirement account. You can roll your TSP into a new employer's 401k. You can withdraw your TSP as a lump sum. That's a bad idea. Or you can transfer your TSP account assets into a qualified annuity. Now, before we wargame each of these options, there's a couple features of your TSP account that you need to be aware of. The main feature of a TSP account, and this is true of those 401ks, is that you contribute money into it pre-tax, and you only pay taxes when you withdraw the funds. And one obvious feature of a TSP account is that when your employment with the military or as a federal employee ends, you can't keep contributing to TSP. Duh. But something else about your TSP account changes when you leave federal service. While you're employed by the federal government, you can take a loan against your TSP, and that can be very advantageous for you. By borrowing against yourself, you do not affect your credit rating. And even if you do have a lousy credit rating, since the TSP funds are your asset, you don't have to pay a high interest rate on that loan. Now, there are limits on how much you can borrow, and there's paperwork, and you don't earn anything on the money you've borrowed against while the loan is still in effect. But you also don't pay taxes on the loan because it's not income, and you don't pay an early withdrawal penalty for accessing that money. When you are no longer employed by the federal government, you can't take a loan, so that's something else that we have to consider in this process. Finally, did you hear me mention penalty for early withdrawal? TSP and 401k, they're retirement accounts. The government wants you to leave your money there until you're old and gray. So they penalize you for taking money out before you're 59 and a half. Basically, they take 10% of whatever you withdraw early in addition to charging you taxes. I mean, it is a cut that stings. Okay, with all that in mind, let's go back to your options. The first option is just to leave your funds in the TSP account. That's probably the easiest thing to do. I mean, you can't make contributions after you've left federal service, but the maintenance costs are low. You can leave your assets in the TSP in the short term until you figure out exactly what you want to do with them. And if you later get a federal civilian job, you can pick up where you left off with your TSP. There's also some special tax considerations if you contributed to your TSP while you were in a combat zone. I don't know much about that, but if you're one of these guys who spent a lot of time overseas and you contributed a lot to your TSP while you were doing it, you might want to make sure that you understand these considerations before you make a decision. Of course, one of the reasons that TSP has such low maintenance fees is because they don't really offer a lot of investment options. If you want more options, you're going to have to move your assets. And then there are some people who roll their assets out of TSP just so they have one less account to keep track of. This is particularly relevant if you only spent a short time in the military and so there's only a small amount of funds in the TSP account. The next option is to roll your TSP account into an individual retirement account. This is going to let you avoid that 10% early withdrawal penalty. Basically, moving from one retirement account to another one lets you avoid that penalty as long as you do the right paperwork. Once your money is in that individual retirement account, you have unlimited investment options. So if you enjoy hands-on investing, moving your TSP into an IRA, that might be a great choice for you. One quick personal side note. I thought that I was going to enjoy hands-on investing, and it turns out I do not. So you might want to figure out how you feel about hands-on investing before you move your TSP. The other upside of rolling into an IRA is that it is not a final decision. Since there's no penalty for transferring between retirement accounts, you could move your TSP to an IRA and then later move to a 401k. The downside of an IRA is that you can't take loans against it. Now, granted, if you leave your money in the TSP, you also can't take loans from that. But in a moment, you'll see that if you roll into a 401k, you can take loans against that account. So the downside is sort of relative to the alternatives. Next, you can roll your TSP into your new employer's 401k. One reason to do this is if your employer's 401k has strong investment options and low maintenance fees. Plus, like I said, it reduces the total number of accounts that you have to keep track of, and while you're employed, you can take loans against that 401k plan. Now, there's no guarantee that your employer has a decent 401k plan. They might have crappy investment options or high maintenance fees. Plus, since some employers have minimum waiting periods for their 401ks, if you're not sure you're going to be with the company long term, then you might just be doing a lot of paperwork for no advantage. Okay, you can withdraw your TSP as a lump sum, but that's generally not a good idea. You're going to have to pay taxes, which might be really high if you're taking that lump sum in the same year that you're hitting your peak income. Plus, if you're younger than 59 and a half, you got to pay that early withdrawal penalty. It's like a double whammy. Now, maybe there's a reason to take this kind of a hit. I mean, your assets become available for immediate use. Some people will try to cushion unemployment by taking these kind of withdrawals, but to my mind, the only real reason to do it is if you have some kind of terminal illness. Your family is financially secure, and so you want to focus on having final family experiences. But this idea of a lump sum withdrawal from TSP is such a bad idea that the government actually allows you a 60-day period of regret where you can transfer the funds back into an IRA account and not pay any penalty. But this rule complicates the process if you actually want to get your hands on your funds, because your fund manager has to take steps to protect himself in the event that you change your mind. And your spouse has rights to your TSP account. So if you decide that you're going to take it out as a lump sum, they have to acknowledge and consent. The last option is to transfer your TSP into a qualified annuity. And this isn't a very popular option, and a lot of people don't even know it exists. An annuity is kind of like a pension that you buy. It provides a stream of income for life, and it can have some features that are beneficial. From the point of view of the TSP decision, one of those benefits is that you don't pay the early withdrawal penalty. But annuities tend to have higher maintenance fees, and some states target this source of income for special taxes, Mr. Moneybags. And probably worst of all, moving money from a TSP into an annuity is final. No do-overs, no take-backsies. Annuities aren't necessarily bad, but they tend to be complicated and have a lot of associated variables. If you think an annuity might be right for you, talk to a certified financial planner or tax professional to get more information. One more note about annuities is beware of salesmen. A lot of investment companies really push annuities because the commission for the salesman is often very high for this type of product. For most people, the best option is to transfer your TSP to an IRA or your new 401k, or just leave it in the federal account. And as always, you want to base your decision on your own personal situation. And keep in mind that the right time to start planning these types of decisions is well before you approach your transition. Another thing that you should plan way in advance is your leave. So watch this video to see how you can get the most out of your terminal leave.